Invitation to speak to you today. I'm a great friend of Mike, and I want to thank him for the kind words that he said. For decades, being in Kernersville, involved in the community, I developed a high level of respect for a strong and sense pride in the men and women are involved in Rotary. Rotarians around the world play a very important part in our communities, especially in our lives. And I want to thank each and every one of you and congratulate you. I know you have to meet a certain criteria to be invited to go through this leadership class. I have been through it, Patty has been through it, and one of my granddaughters have been through it. So I know how much information you can get from being there. And I want to congratulate you. And I want to tell you, it's an honor to speak to the youth. You know, I don't know why, but it don't seem that in our schools they teach anymore American history. And one of our greatest presidents, I think it was Thomas Jefferson, said if we don't remember our past, we will not be ready to protect our future or meet the challenges of our future. I sincerely thank the Rotary Club members for their dedication and encouragement of our youth. Their goal this week has been to give you each a unique opportunity to realize a key role that you play into our future. You are our future generation of leaders. It will be up to you what this nation might become. And let me tell you, in my opinion right now, we are in bad shape. World War II was one of the most violent armed conflicts in the history of mankind. 55 million people were killed worldwide in World War II. And you multiply that by 7, and you would have a number of wounded and injured in World War II. It is an honor and privilege to share my story about World War II with such an elite group of rising juniors and seniors from our local Forsyth High School. We are all blessed with a God-given talent and purpose in this life. And how we use those gifts is what protecting our future in this great nation is about. Truly, one person can indeed make a difference. And it is my sincere hope and prayer that you will pursue your God-given talent and find a way to make a positive impact on our nation, its leaders, and its people. As I speak, I will relate to my Christian faith. If there are those among you of different faith, it's my hope and prayer you can relate my words to your respective beliefs in love and concern for this nation and one another. Though this story I will be sharing with you my many events and happenings in my lifetime. I learned a lot in my young life in nearby Summerfield. Good work ethic, right from wrong, love, compassion, and sharing, accepting my responsibility, and being accountable for my actions. We were disciplined to obey and respect authority, sometimes to the tune of a hickory switch that might leave marks on you behind and legs. In our liberal society today, that might be considered child abuse, but in our generation it was known as discipline in love. My generation has been labeled by several names. The so-called Great Depressionary generation, the World War II generation, and by one writer and commentator, Tom Brokaw, the greatest generation. This same person wrote a book by that name. But you, as leaders of this nation, can be the next greatest generation. We were taught to love and respect our neighbor. If we had food, our neighbor had food. Or if he had food, we had food. If he needed help, we helped him. If we needed help, he helped us. And this was all done without any thought of monetary compensation. It's my opinion that the Depression was a God-sent blessing in disguise. It was a wake-up call from God. It brought our generation closer together and closer to our Lord. After living through the Depression, I think maybe my generation was being prepared for what lie ahead of us in the near future, that being World War II. We, along with our allies, won that awful war, but let me tell you, it was only by the grace of God, for the odds were certainly not in our favor. When Hitler heard about the attack on Pearl Harbor, he was elated by the news and said, "There's no way we can lose this war now." The stark, cold facts were that victory for Germany, Japan, and Italy was only a matter of time. I don't know how many of you believe in miracles, but I assume most all of you do. But my question to you, what is the difference, if indeed there is a difference, in a miracle and God's divine plan? Here's my brush with a miracle. I graduated from high school, finished in the 11th grade, and that was as high as high school went. That was on May the 8th, 1941. Like in one day was World War II, the attack on Pearl Harbor. The first job I had was a truck driver with Chilwine Bottling Company, representing Winston-Salem. December the 7th, 1941, as I said, was the attack on Pearl Harbor. This was the start of World War II. It was then I registered for the draft and took a job in the shipyard in Wilmington, North Carolina, building liver ships. 18 months until I was drafted in the military service in the latter part of 1943. My mother and father insisted that I not go into the Navy for fear if something were to happen while out on those mighty oceans, I would have no chance of surviving. The day I was inducted after a physical examination, I passed by 3 military officers, one from the Navy, Army, and Marines. The naval officer looked at my records and said, "Good, you have a year and a half experience in a shipyard, and we're in need of people like you. You want the Navy, don't you?" And I said, "No, sir." He kept insisting that I would choose the Navy, explaining that I would get a good rate and they needed people like me. Again, I refused because of my mother and father's wishes. The last words that man said to me were, "You will live to regret this." I chose the Army and was put in the infantry. I don't know whether you know what part the infantry plays. They are the frontline foot soldiers. They are the point of the sword in any battle, so to speak. The first in and the last out. World War II, the infantry represented only 14% of all U.S. forces. Yet they suffered 80% of all the casualties. One thing I did observe, that I never met an atheist in a foxhole. After realizing my fate, I wrote home and told my 2 brothers, "Don't listen to Mom and Daddy. Get in the Navy." They took my advice and joined the Navy, and they both returned home safely. My aunt gave me a small pocket testament in January 1944 with a name inscribed on the front binding. She asked that I read it daily and carry it in my pocket over my heart, which I did. And you will be able to see that Bible up here. That a piece of shrapnel went all the way through it. After my basic training in Camp Blandon, Florida, consisting of only 17 weeks, I was sent to France and landed as a replacement on Omaha Beach the latter part of July 1944. After landing, a chaplain was one of the first persons to talk to us. I shall always remember one of the things he had to say. "I don't know how many of you have ever prayed, or I don't know how many of you know how to pray, but I will say this, you will learn and you will pray." Among the heroes who served our country were the many dedicated chaplains who were living and some even dying on the front lines with men like me. Some were even accompanying the little bears as they evacuated the women. The night before D-Day, landing on June the 6th, 1944, there was a lot of anxiety and apprehension among the troops aboard those ships that night. Their fate awaited them the next day off of the beaches of the Normandy coast. The uncertainty of what tomorrow might bring for them were not only on the minds of the troops aboard their ships, but even to General Dwight D. Eisenhower command of all Allied forces in the European theater of operations. Eisenhower had already written a speech to address our nation, and he had that speech in his pocket in case we failed. During World War II, I proudly served in the 79th Infantry Division. That was attached to the U.S. Third Army, commanded by General George S. Patton. General Patton was a very brave and dedicated soldier. He was also very aggressive, and this oftentimes got him in trouble with his superior officers for fear he might get himself overextended and run out of supplies. On one occasion this did happen. He ran completely out of gas, making his army very vulnerable. Our division on this occasion advanced 180 miles in 72 hours, making it the fastest opposed march of any infantry division in the history of warfare. And let me go to say about being aggressive during wartime. You don't lose as many or have as many casualties if you are aggressive. If you're aggressive, they kindly fear you. But if you're conservative, they will come after you. Patton's philosophy was not all wrong. He believed that as you get the enemy to retreat, don't allow him time to stop and regroup. Keep him on the run with his backs to you. Then he's not near as much of a threat. General Patton was also very outspoken and could not seem to understand that men might mentally break down under the awful reality of combat. I have often seen grown men lay down and cry like babies. His inability to accept this behavior was on one occasion got him into serious trouble. Even with some of his shortcomings, we had great respect for him. He was a very religious person. I would like to tell you what life was like up on the front line during World War II. We slept on the ground, endured all the elements of the weather, just like animals. When possible to get food to us, it came in cardboard boxes, like Cracker Jack boxes, one for each meal. And I have been as long, excuse me, I have been as long as 3 days without any kind of food. Some nations took their frontline troops off every 2 weeks for short periods of rest, others somewhat long. Time being of essence with the U.S., our division was on the front line 4 straight months, 120 days before being relieved for a rest. Today, our society cannot tolerate the thought of military casualties. But our question is, what would have happened if our generation had not been willing to accept casualties? We would not have landed on the beaches of Normandy. We would not have landed on the many Pacific islands. And today we may well be living under a dictatorship in a police state not enjoying the freedom that we do have today. As harsh as it may sound, our companies could request replacement just like any other commodity or supply to cover losses sustained. In fierce fighting, it was not uncommon for a company to lose 60 to 90% of its men in a 2 or 3 day period. It's no way possible to train a person for the reality of combat, for situations and circumstances change every day. You did not worry about what happened to you this morning. You did not worry about what might happen to you this afternoon. You worried about what was happening to you at the present time and how you might survive it. Our love and concern for one another was such that we would risk our lives for our fellow man. There was always two things you had to face every day out in front of you. One being the enemy and the other being death. But you never forgot the fact that you had to keep moving forward and advancing. This was the only way of home alive. This, my friend, is some of the price that our great nation, that we were asked to pay for the enjoyment that we have of freedom today. I know from my own experience that in crisis situations, when it is life-threatening for one, or self one, or a loved one, or a fellow man, you will have the no fear of pain by the grace of God. I vividly remember that day. It was Thursday, November the 13th, around 3 p.m. That was the day I was wounded. The winter of 1944 marked the coldest winter the French had experienced in 50 years. Light snow had fallen during the night before. I hope you never experienced sleeping on the ground and wake up with a blanket of snow covering you. Snow flares had occurred during the day. I, along with my buddies, was caught out between the lines. As I lay there, I was wounded a second time. I lay there for 18 hours during that cold night, listening to the moans and groans of my fellow men, some crying and some dying, some begging for a drink of water, and I was unable to help. I realized my fate, that my life was barely hanging in a balance by a mighty small thread. I did a lot of praying during the night. There again, by the grace of God, I survived. My wounds included a severed artery and nerve in my right shoulder. I know many of you think, well, you couldn't survive for 19 hours with the artery cut. My arm was paralyzed, and with every beat of my heart, the blood flowed. Yet I lay there 18 hours. The angel of death brushed by me not once, not twice, but 5 times that night. The first was when I was wounded and fell behind the tank that I was following. I knew my wound was serious. The tank was in a very exposed position on the crest of a hill. As as the tank started backing off of the hill for a better position, it was then I met my second brush with death. As I lay there severely wounded, the tank reversed position, and I was certain I would be run over by the tank. It was then that I did the only thing I could do. With my left hand, I grabbed the track of that tank while it was moving and pulled myself out from under it. My right arm was paralyzed. I had to use my left. Thinking back, had the tank been on the other side and I had used my right hand to clear myself, it would have been impossible. I was caught out between the lines, catching fire from both sides. The third death brush came sometimes later when I was wounded the second time, while lying there. When I was hit, I was like the thief on the cross beside of Jesus. The first words I spoke was, "God have mercy." Then my life passed before me in a split second, like the pages of a book being flipped by your thumb. The fourth brush with death came as I lay there 18 hours at cold light before being picked up. The frigid temperature, cold winds were a blessing and a part, for my artery was severely cut, and if I moved a finger, it would spurt blood. So I had to lay very still and hold pressure on that wound with my chin. I lay there with 7 layers of clothes as insulation. With all of this, I was very calm and not emotional. With all of that many clothes, I had no trouble putting pressure on my wound with my chin. I learned that you had to freeze, stifle, or control your emotions if you were to survive in combat. I had no fear of pain, even though I prayed a lot. While I was there and in and out of consciousness during that night, as I look back, truly I must have cheated death at least 5 times. The 5th time come the Bible that I was carrying in my pocket over my heart, which took a direct hit with a piece of shrapnel. Without my Bible over my heart, the shrapnel would sure have pierced my heart, and you can see it up here later. Remembering the 23rd Psalm, verse 4, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff comfort me." I must have been in the valley of the shadow of death for 18 long hours. I'm certain that is why life means so much to me today. God's love is my lifeline, from whence comes my strength. Around 9 a.m. the next morning, I was picked up by little bears and placed on top of a tank while it was being fired at by the enemy. When I arrived at the aid station, my blood-soaked clothes and shoes were cut off of me, 7 layers to be exact, and any personal belongings are saved, that being my wallet and my little Bible. You see, we had to travel light. Our lives depended upon it. After a few days now coming out from under the drugs, I saw the little Bible and realized, too, it had taken a hit by a piece of shrapnel. I dare say you can take an ice pick with all your might and pierce that book in its entirety. The piece of shrapnel penetrated the entire book and caught within the outer binding of that Bible. That piece of steel would surely have pierced my heart, if not in my entire body. Little did my wonderful aunt know that that Bible was a gift of life for me. Over the past 60 years, one question still lingers in my mind. Why was my life spared while other quality, brave men around me were dying? I spent 25 long months in the hospital recuperating. So you see, by the grace of God, I am what I am, including my position and even to my life. We're reminded of the tragic events of 9/11 and wars such as World War II, that freedom is not free. It's won only by sacrifice and suffering and pain. And let me say, the Germans were supposed to have men that were already battle trained. But we in the United States, even though Hitler said we were just a bunch of Boy Scouts and farm boys and civilian army, was no match for his trained military. But we fought the best he had. Let me say, Mortal Kombat is one of the most emotional, charged experience that a human being can ever endure. But you had to learn to perform your duties, even though you have to learn to numb your emotions to retain your own sanity. You cannot allow yourself to stop and reach for a fallen buddy. Even for a split second, it could result in death for you or another comrade. You had to become hardened to this to survive. And I think today you hear of soldiers coming back and committing suicide. In my opinion, they never learned to control their emotions, which is important if you survive in a war. To say that combat does not affect everyone's mind and soul is an understatement. Some more than others. Even today, some of the veterans of World War II are still fighting that awful war in their dreams, and they will to the day they die. I had a friend who has passed away now. The only time he would ever talk was his war experiences, when he was trying to drown his memory in alcohol. It was then and only then he would say it was death, hell, and destruction. That's a pretty simple answer of it. Death, hell, and destruction. War's dirty. War's ugly. Where there's war, there's fighting. Bloodshed and dying. But it's fatal for a nation to go to war without the will to win. In my opinion, we have not fought a war in our nation since World War II with the will to win. Even at the high cost, it's not as cost as losing the war. I'm convinced you have really never lived until been that these two most important words in the English language are the words to choose. And choices go back to our very beginning. Adam and Eve made a choice to eat the forbidden fruit, and it has in fact affected mine and your life today. So the choices you make not only affect your lives, but affect the lives of others. So try to make wise and frugal choices. The choices you make will determine the life that you live and how you may prosper. So it is a very important thing to make the right choices in life. Your generation have the opportunities to choose to make a difference. You can be the next greatest generation. President John F. Kennedy once said, "Ask what not your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country." Young men and women, I don't want to frighten you, but it's a fact. We are dangerously close to losing our freedom and everything we hold dear. Yes, that can happen to us here in America. In closing, I would like to tell you about American Cemetery on Omaha Beach. This was the bloodiest beach of all the beaches in Normandy. There are 9,387 grave markers at this cemetery. These markers all face the west over the mighty ageless Atlantic Ocean to the country where these brave men and women live. We want to thank them with lasting gratitude and trust in the words of Almighty God, which are inscribed in the chapel nearby. I give unto them eternal life, that they shall never perish. If you ever visit France, take time to see this beautiful cemetery on the hill overlooking Omaha Beach. As you look down on the beach, visualize, if you can, the happening on June the 6th, 1944, known as the longest day. Place in your mind the activities that occurred that day. You would be looking at the greatest armada of ships ever to be assembled. Some are unloading troops, others are unloading equipment, machinery, and other vehicles. Some are shelling on enemy positions. Planes are overhead bombing and strafing, shells exploding everywhere, machine guns firing all around. Rangers are scaling a vertical rock cliff by rope while being shot at. Men are being shot like fish in a barrel. The water's edge is running red with blood from dead, dying, and wounded Americans. A sergeant yelled as what men he had left. He said, "We're getting killed on this beach. Let's go inland and get killed." Now pause for a moment and bow your head and thank God for our freedom. The next time you look up to the blue sky and see the beautiful American flag flying in the wind, think of this. The flag does not fly because the wind passes it by. The flag flies from the last breath of each military member who has died protecting it. American soldiers don't fight because they hate what's in front of them. They fight because they love what's behind them. On a daily basis, let's stand with our soldiers and purposely thank each one of them for their service to our country. I'm proud to have served this great nation. It is my prayer that God will always bless you and your loved ones, our church and our nation, and by His grace and guidance might freedom prevail, especially in the face of my most tragic events of terrorism. It is my sincere hope that something I have said will inspire you each to change your attitude and approach every new day with a more positive and perspective attitude about the gift of life, about the gift of freedom, and let us never forget those who sacrificed our freedom. They gave all of their tomorrows for mine and yours today. And let me reiterate how important it is to you people. And I understand not much American history is taught in our schools today. And I think it's a great opportunity to you learn a little history about what happened during World War II. And I want to say I love each and every one of you. It don't hurt to tell a person you love them. You and I live today, but we are not promised a tomorrow. So we ought to enjoy every day that you live. If you don't enjoy every day you live, you pay one day of your life for it. So remember that. And God bless you, and God bless our nation, the United States of America. Thanks.
Doc, thank you so much. Every time I hear your talk, it just inspires me again. It really does. I know a couple of the students had asked if you would mind if they had a picture made with you. I don't think you would mind, would you? That'd be okay?
Yeah.
And I'd like for you to take a few minutes and just look at the display and some of the things that Doc was talking about, the Bible that accompanied him and brought him back alive from France. Take a look at that and take your time and spend as much time as you'd like with
I was just saying, Pat, that, you know, a lot of people say, where did the shrapnel stop? They want it to be in Revelations or something, but it actually penetrated the outside.